Working with Your Computer by Tristica Woodruff. Some of the major components of a computer system include your motherboard, processor, BIOS, which is the input and output devices for your computer, the PC memory, which referred to as RAM, and storage devices. The central processing unit. So we will go to the motherboard. A motherboard is the main circuit board of the computer on which the processing tasks occur. It's sometimes known as the main board, the system board, the planner board, or the logistics boardus. It holds many of the crucial electronic components of the system, such as the central processing unit and memory, and it provides connectors for other peripherals. A motherboard provides the electrical connections by which the other components of the system communicate or talk to one another. The shape and the layout of the motherboard is called the form factor. The form factor affects where individual components go and the shape of the computer's case. There are several specific form factors that most PC motherboards use so that they can all fit in standard cases. For a comparison of form factors past and present, you can check it out on motherboards.org for more information. We can see here a diagram of the motherboard. You have the socket for the microprocessor determines what kind of central processing unit the motherboard uses. The chipset is part of the motherboard's logic system and is usually made up of two parts, the north bridge and the south bridge. So these bridges connect to the CPU and to other parts of the computer. The basic input and output, or the BIOS, chip controls the most basic functions of the computer and performs a self-test every time you turn it on. So some systems, they feature the dual BIOS, and it provides a backup in case one fails or in case an error occurs. The real-time clock chip is a battery-operated chip that maintains basic settings and the system time. Their slots and ports are found in the motherboard, which include the peripheral component interconnect, which is the PCI. It connects for video, sound, and video capture cords. The AGP, also known as the accelerated graphics port, is a dedicated port for video cards. The IDE is integrated drive electronics. It interfaces with the hard drives. And the universal serial bus, or the firewire, is external peripherals, and you have the memory slots. Components of the motherboard include the CPU and memory. The CPU, or the microprocessor, is a silicon chip responsible for executing instructions to process the data. And memory, a simple computer chip that plugs into your computer's motherboard called RAM, and it stands for random access memory. It's measured in megabytes and gigabytes, and we'll learn about that more later. Processors. We have a few here, the most commonly known: AMD, the Apple, Intel, Motorola, and Sun, and there's some pictured here in the slide. Interface. We can see some of the interfaces here of the router pretty much reaching out to the computers and connecting with Wi-Fi, equaling internet. So in computing, an interface is a shared boundary across which two separate components of a computer system exchange information. For example, the router to the computer. The exchange can be seen between the software, the computer hardware, peripheral devices, humans, and combinations of any of these. Some computer hardware devices, such as a touchscreen, can send and receive data through the interface, while others, such as a mouse, a microphone, or a joystick, are the one-way only interface. The controller card plugs into a slot on the motherboard, and it connects to a port to provide an electrical connection to the peripheral device. BIOS. One of the most common uses of flash memory is for the basic input and output system of your computer, commonly known as BIOS. On virtually every computer available, the BIOS makes sure that the other chips and the hardwares and the ports and the CPU function together. The BIOS software has a number of different roles, but its most important role is to load the operating system. When you turn on your computer and the microprocessor tries to execute its first instruction, it has to get instruction from somewhere. It can't get it from the operating system because the operating system is located on a hard disk, and the microprocessor cannot get it without some instructions and telling it how to. So the BIOS provides these instructions. Input is a device of a hardware that allows you to communicate with your computer, and some examples are seen here with the keyboards, pointing devices such as the mouse, a remote control, the joystick for gaming, touch screens, either on your computer or any mobile device, scanners, your graphics tablets, which you have to pretty much sign in order to have your credit card go through at the cash register, your microphone, digital camera, any of the webcams, such as this one pictured here, are the ones that are built into your computer, and light pins. Output. An output device is anything that the computer system uses to communicate information to the individual. Some examples are seen here: the monitor of your computer, laser printers, inkjet printers, you have speakers and projectors, and anything that is allowing it to come from the computer. So output is something that you can actually see. The PC memory. So computer memory and computer storage are important aspects of the computer. Oftentimes, the computer memory and the storage can be confused with one another. However, they are both completely different components of the computer with completely different purposes. To better understand computer memory versus computer storage, you must know the basics of which each one does and how it functions. A computer's memory is most commonly referred to as RAM. RAM stands for Random Access Memory, and it's measured in megabytes and gigabytes, as I told you earlier. Most computers can handle at most between 1 gigabyte and 8 gigabytes of RAM. And as far as the hardware is concerned, RAM memory is just a simple computer chip that plugs into your computer's motherboard. The computer memory, or RAM, is used by your computer for instant storage. Your computer needs instant storage to allow applications and processes to run up to speed. So the computer RAM is always changing based on your latest and greatest computer task. For example, when you run an application such as iTunes, every time you click on a song to play, that information is being stored to your computer's RAM. The total amount of information that can be stored to RAM is based on how much RAM you have. So if you have 2 gigabytes of RAM installed into your computer can only store up to that amount of 2 gigabytes. So when you're multitasking, or if you're using multiple programs at once, the RAM stores information about all the programs that you're using to help them run faster. So the RAM memory is reset each time your computer is restarted. And if you were to use iTunes, then restart your computer, the iTunes will no longer be on your computer. But however, the application that you work with after the restart would again start storing information into the RAM. And here is a picture of a RAM memory stick. Storage. The computer storage is different from RAM in that it's a permanent high-capacity memory. The computer storage takes place within your computer's hard drive. Computer storage and hard drive capacity is measured in gigabytes also. For example, you may have 250 gigabyte storage on your hard drive computer, and this is a total capacity of your computer storage. You can't store more than the 250 gigabytes worth of files and applications unless you add more storage. The computer storage, or the hard drives, are used to store everything on your computer. For example, if you were to install the Microsoft Word on your computer from an install disk, you could then start using Microsoft Word whenever you want to. You would not have to insert the Microsoft Word disk to use the application over and over again because it is stored onto the hard drive. Hard drives are not used for instant storage, but rather for long-term storage. And once something is written to the hard drive, it will stay there until it is manually deleted from the computer itself. The hard drive memory will not reset because of the computer restart or anything of that nature. Computer RAM and memory and computer hard drive storage actually work in combination with one another. Whenever you add a file or an application to your computer, it is saved to the hard drive. Whenever you go to access or run that file from the hard drive, the actual process of using the application is then stored to the computer's RAM. And some examples of the storage device include the flash drive, a floppy, which is pretty old school now, and you have the zip disk and CDs. And some of the newer laptops today, there's no way to put in a CD, so the most commonly known one is the stick, the memory stick, or the flash drive. And here's a diagram of a whole computer system. So you have the microprocessor, or the CPU, which is the whole hard drive of the computer. The mouse is the input, putting things into the computer, and you can visually see it onto the monitor of the output device, and another output device is the printer. And if you want to store anything, you have the flash drive, the floppy, and the CD. Well, when purchasing a computer system, there are some considerations here, and I listed a few. But the first thing that most of us are constrained to is a budget. So when you're trying to purchase a computer, how much money are you willing to spend? The next thing you should look for is requirements. Do you need a laptop, or is it a desktop that you need? What is the machine going to be doing for you? Once you have done this, go back to the number one priority, which is your budget, and see how is it compatible with your budget. Once you have ironed out all the bugs, it's time to go into the computer itself. There are many things to consider when actually buying a computer, but like I said, I think the processor is one of the most important factors when choosing a computer. And in my opinion, Intel is one of the best chips, and their Core 2 Duo range is the best to go for in the family. Next, RAM. So if you want to go for as much RAM as possible, 2 gigabytes would be a good starting point. Then you can make sure you get Windows Vista, and Windows Vista, probably the 64-bit, as your operating system. The hard drive is the next piece you should tackle. Again, for ordinary people, it should be just a case of bigger is better. Graphics. Now, some of the computers come with a form of graphics built in, but my recommendation is to go with something a little better. It depends on what you're trying to use your computer for. Definitely Apple is one of the better ones. Now that you seem to tackle the main considerations, the next thing to think about is the software. The Windows Vista Standard and the Premium, the virus and the spy package. This is probably the most important. If you don't purchase this, then your computer will be out of commission. I just had to spend $250 on fixing my computer, and I didn't know what was wrong with it, but Best Buy is so helpful. So make sure you purchase the virus and spy package, and determine which internet you will be considering using.